We're going to catch up with the two most recent episodes of the Star Wars original series, The Mandalorian. We've been sort of recapping two episodes at a time as this new season 3 has been airing. I think both of us have had, somewhat mixed reactions to the season so far. We've liked certain elements, certain other things haven't worked so well for us, but it's definitely been The Mandalorian. I think the show that we've come to know it to be over the past few years or so. And it is, somewhat decent to have it back on Disney Plus and back in our regular rotation. But, with these two episodes that have just currently come out, what are your overall thoughts about them? How are you feeling about the show now at this point? We'll get into the spoilers and the details of some of the specific things that have happened. But these two most recent episodes, what did you think about them?
Man, there's things about the pirate that I really like that I can't talk about until the spoilers, but there's something there I think they're doing that I actually really appreciate, man. So that episode's fine. Guns for Hire, it's a little bit of a more mixed bag for me. It's one of those episodes that because of it's something about the cameos, man, and make it feel a little more unserious. I just couldn't put my finger on it, but that's what it feels like. It felt like, how can we throw these people in here, but also slightly progress a story that the overall story of what they're trying to do was interesting, but this little, again, we know the Mandalorian week to week is just a different adventure. This is the adventure for that week, for this week, it was just mad at me. What they were trying to do was just add at me. I wasn't all the way in it as I hoped. Again, I like the outcome and I like the ending of the episode, but everything leading up to it felt really weird, man. It felt like, I don't know. I feel like we were forcing things a little bit that we didn't have to force. That's kind of what it felt like. But overall, these past two episodes, I'm okay with. Again, and I think overall themes and overarching story beats that they're trying to hit make sense for me and actually work for me for the most part. But we just got to get there. And what I will say is I don't like how long it's taken us to get there, though. That's what I'll add to that. But they're fine, man. There's things about these episodes. Again, I still enjoy. I'm very much looking forward to these next couple of episodes. I think there's going to be some meaty stuff there. This very much felt like chapter 22 in particular, the last episode very much felt fillery, right? It felt like this is definitely a filler episode. This is now what we're going to do next week. And so of course sometimes you need those to get to the nitty-gritty, and I think the next couple episodes are going to be the results of, again, some okay setups of what's going on. So yeah, they're fine. Again, some good stuff, some stuff not so much, but I really dug the pirate episode for what it was.
Yeah, episode 5 of season 3 was incredible to me. It was actually like maybe the best episode of the season so far, just because of how adventurous it felt, how big it felt. It actually was really
Exactly.
exciting, and it started to pull together a lot of these threads and questions that I've had about this series up until this point. Because after episode 4, in which we reached the midway point, I was just starting to feel like, well, what are we doing here? Where is the story going? Are we going to get some answers and some clarity in terms of what the direction is? And episode 5 was certainly starting to set up and answer some of those questions, at least point us in the direction.
Yep.
And it also delivered some great action, some great spectacle. And so I'm like, this is the prime Mandalorian adventure that I would come to expect and know, that I've come to love over the past few years. And then episode 6 drops, and it is, I would say, damn near awful. Like I almost loathe that episode because of just how uninteresting it was, how shoehorned it feels, how unconcerned it felt with just the larger story. And I love the word that you use, unserious. It felt super unserious. And I just walked away like, how the hell could we have such an experience like this where one week we just do such an excellent job of delivering a great Mandalorian adventure while still furthering the larger story at hand, and then subsequently we take like 5 ginormous steps back, because that's what episode 6 felt like. It just felt like a huge significant step back. I'm very disillusioned now with just where things are, and I don't know how much faith I still have in the final 2 episodes, because it is only 2 episodes now. Like we are in the final stretch of this season, so like, what's the point? What are we doing? And I think one of the big things that continues to be a sore spot for me is the fact that Mando, Din Djarin, is feeling like a supporting character in his own show.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw a lot of that in the Book of Boba Fett. And I'm just like, wait, did we learn nothing from that experience? Did we learn nothing that like that really didn't work for the Book of Boba Fett, where he was just like on the outskirts of everything that was happening? He wasn't really influential to the stuff that was going on in his own show. It feels like Din Djarin is very much in that same exact predicament, and I just don't understand it. Maybe a part of it is just wanting to expand the world of this story, which I totally get. This is the 3rd season.
Right.
You got to have new characters. You got to have new stories. You got to take it bigger and bolder places. But at the same time, like, we got to get grounded with who our who our central protagonist is. And I just feel
Mhm.
like it feels like we haven't done that. And so I'm now just, back in the place of disappointment. I'm back in the place of like, I don't even know what to expect. And I don't even know if I'm excited anymore about what the final two seasons, or excuse me, the final two episodes will hold. But let's talk about more specifics. Let's talk about episode 5 of the season. If you haven't seen these latest 2 episodes or any episode of The Mandalorian, this is your official spoiler warning. Go watch this stuff and come back and listen to the rest of our conversation. The majority of episode 5 is really about one thing, right? It's about Gorian Shard, I believe his name is. What his name is? He's the Pirate King, right? He wants to
Mhm.
come to Navarro and essentially take over. He's launching an invasion against Grief Karga, who's coming back in this episode, played by Carl Weathers, and we get to just see this massive invasion of Navarro take place. And it's interesting, the setup here, because Grief Karga has just done a lot of work over the past couple of years to make Navarro feel like a place of peace, a place of prosperity and productivity. It's become like a really good safe haven for a lot of people, for the people that live there. But now Gorian Shard, the Pirate King, he's not having none of that shit. He wants to come back and exact revenge and take over. And so from the very opening moments really of that episode, we get to see that happen, and he pretty much takes over the land. And so that necessitates the help of Din Djarin and all of his fellow Mandalorians to come in and sort of launch a counterattack to take back Navarro from the possession of the Pirate King. What did you think about that being sort of the focal point? That's, again, sort of a rescue mission. We typically know The Mandalorian is sort of a rescue show. Like there's a mission at hand,
Right.
and
Mhm.
somehow Mando and Grogu and crew will come in and sort of alleviate that pressure or that problem for whoever is in that particular predicament. But what did you think about the setup there and just how that all played out over the course of the episode?
Yeah, one of the things that I've kind of been alluding to that I love about the season of The Mandalorian is the expansion of the Mandalorians, I guess, returning into the world. I love just when we're walking around and there's like a bunch of other Mandalorians just kind of in this community, man, in this fortitude of of community. It's just really cool, I think, to see, especially again, we know Boba Fett before all of this, which created all of this. The Mandalorians weren't much, right? We didn't know much about them. They weren't really a thing. They were just kind of thrown in there and ever so slightly written about, and we didn't have a lot of visuals to go off of. But really, man, I love that this show is like expanding again the lore and what I think about Mandalorians. I think it's really cool. Like I'm episode 5, I was like, damn, that'd be a cool ass group costume, like a bunch of people with different Mandalorian costumes. I don't know. It's just something about it that feels really cool, right? It's something about them expanding again the knowledge of these people that feels right. Like the name of the TV show is The Mandalorian. It's like you might as well add an S to episode 5. It's The Mandalorians. And I think when you veer like that sometimes for the expansion of a group of people that does have to do with your main character and slightly Bo-Katan, I thought it was pretty cool, and I thought it was pretty well done, man. So I enjoyed it very much. We've been talking about it. I love a good team up, man. And this was not only a team up, it was, as they talked about, something that could get them to the next step of bringing their people back, right? They were doing this for land. They were doing this to show that Mandalorians are still alive and we're still here. They had a purpose. And I really love that about it too, man. And so I found myself, again, really enjoying all those aspects about it. There's the one with the big gun. And I even like while they're talking about it, they're in the cave and they don't have a talking stick. They have a talking hammer. Of course they'd have a talking hammer. They're armor people. I don't know. It's just little stuff like that. I was like, man, this shit is cool. I love that they're doing this, man. So that's part of the reason. I think I love that aspect that they're doing in the season with those things with the Mandalorians as a culture, but I also just really like the episode because I love team up episodes.
Yeah, I mean, what makes the ending of it even more gratifying once all the Mandalorians come in and rescue Navarro is the fact that they do have that scene in the cave preceding it where they have to sort of convince each other that this is worth doing, right? Because it's going to be a risk for them. They can lose their people. They can become, further closer to extinction if they go on this mission and potentially lose fellow Mandalorians. And so you see Din Djarin sort of pleading for their help, saying like, we should do this. And then you get, Paz, who you think is going to like not be for it, like step up and say like, no, this is exactly why we should do it. This is what we're built for.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're here. We can protect and save these people. And it's not really out of a selfish gain because like by the end of it, we know that Grief Karga extends Navarro to be sort of their new home, but it's really out of the service of protecting people. And as you said, making sure their presence is felt because though they've been sort of on the outskirts of the galaxy, they haven't been really known to be around. This is a way to make a statement and to come back in full force. And just how great was that whole action set piece? It was so, I think it was so
Yeah.
well shot. I think that the action choreography here was just so well done. It felt really big and epic. It felt like big budget Star Wars. And I think The Mandalorian, by and large, does a really, really excellent job at action set pieces. Like they typically always kind of knock it out of the park. But I think in this particular episode, it actually felt like we were on like a theatrical level sort of Star Wars event. Like that whole thing going down, like it felt like it was really laid out well. You knew where every character was. You didn't really have trouble following the action. Did you feel similarly when you saw it all unfold? Like what was sort of the standout moments for you in that final set piece?
Oh, for sure. I even love before when Bo-Katan kind of tells them that y'all are acting as a special ops military unit. You know what I'm saying? And they're in the ship and they're all lined up. Again, this is all very like nerdy, but it's important. Very nerd. But like again, the way they were lined up and about to drop into the city was like, yes, more of that.
Badass,
Give me
yeah.
more of the badass. Like that, again, that's enriching the culture of Mandalorians to me, right? Like we'll talk about this later, right? But knowing, let's say, like a Star Wars movie happens later, and we're like, oh shit, is that the Mandalorians? You know, it's a different excitement now. And I think the show is doing a good job of being like, oh yeah, you should be excited about that. That's a Mandalorian over there, or these are Mandalorians. And so I really like the of course the main, I don't know if you call it the main set piece, but the moment in which they're surrounded and there's only, they really have to figure out how to get out of this pickle. And then in comes, of course, again, Mandalorian with the big gun. And I don't know, man, something about it that felt, of course, it feels Western-y, right? It's supposed to. Of course, it feels very much like you've semi-seen it before, right? But it's still something about it that felt very endearing, very charismatic on screen. It's like, oh, no, this is Star Wars. The Mandalorians are pulling up. So I really like that scene, man, where they're surrounded and they have to kind of get out of that pickle.
Yeah, great Star Wars action all around. And then really after you get not only an incredible set piece, we end the episode with two very, very key pivotal moments. Again, sort of tying the threads of questions that we've been asking, things that we've been wondering about the story this season. One, you get Bo-Katan sort of being tasked by the armorer to unite all the Mandalorians. You know, the armorer says like Bo-Katan is the perfect person to walk both of these worlds. And we've known Bo-Katan to sort of be on the outskirts of the culture. She's been without her helmet for a while, but now she's been sort of ingrained into this new Mandalorian culture that she's found along with Din Djarin. And the armorer sees the value in that. The armorer says like, no, you are the perfect person to be able to unite all of our disparate cultures and factions to create one people once again. And then subsequently, we get a crazy final scene in which we find sort of the remnants of the prison transport from Moff Gideon. We've been wondering about his whereabouts all season and what happened to him. We got tipped off a little bit earlier that he never made it to trial. And we find out that at the end of this episode, his prison transport was hijacked by a group of Mandalorians. Now, leaving out that episode, I was like, holy shit, wait a second. That is crazy. After everything we just saw, they were so heroic and they felt like the people they were always meant to be, right? And then you get that gut punch. It's like, oh wait, the Mandalorians are responsible for freeing Moff Gideon. Well, we find out, in episode 6, I think, who's responsible for that. But what are your thoughts about Bo-Katan, sort of being set up in that role to be that person to sort of unite all these people and to come together? And it almost feels like, to an extent, like the Mandalorian namesake, the title is kind of about her this season. It's sort of rotating away from Din Djarin, which I have feelings about, but I also love the fact that Bo-Katan gets a little bit more of the spotlight. But what do you think about her, sort of stepping into that leadership role?
Even to add on to that, low key, little Grogu, right? They're treating him like a youngling. Is he also the Mandalorian? You know what I'm saying? Man, I love the concept of Bo-Katan walking both worlds, man. And it's something, we kind of talk about, those first couple episodes where she was like not all the way into the Mandalorian, I think customs for a while, right? Where she was like, where they pulled up on the armor was like, I mean, today you're a Mandalorian, take off your helmet, whenever you want to. And you can see how I guess apprehensive she was about that. She still wasn't bought all the way in. But now the what the armor brings to her is like, but we kind of need you. We kind of need you to serve both worlds. And again, I just really love that idea, man, because Bo-Katan really is like she also bathed in the water. She's also royalty at the same time as being a leader of these other Mandalorians who also don't wear helmets. You know what I'm saying? She has now seen it all. She has been part of both worlds, and she has been royalty in both worlds as well. And I think it makes sense for her and the journey she's on to kind of tread that line to potentially bring the other Mandalorians back, man. Now, again, that raises like another semi cool question, I think, for me, which is like, oh man, are we gonna have like if and when all the Mandalorians come together, there are gonna be some Mandalorians who got their helmets on and others who never take them off, or like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh shoot, that's kind of a cool concept that I can get behind if they were to do that, or they could just make all the new or all the Mandalorians with their helmets off try to, you know, make them go bathe in the waters too. I don't know what they're gonna make them do, but I really like that idea, man. So yeah, I love the position Bo-Katan is in, and I love that again. She's having to be liaison between these two groups, man. I think it's a good idea in service of the story.
Yeah, I mean the larger purpose of the show, especially in those earlier episodes, we were getting to see Bo-Katan sort of reflect on a lost world, a lost society. She was sort of in mourning about the Mandalorian people not being what they used to be and not being as royal or as regal or even as respected as they used to be. So for her to just like find her way back into the scenario and start to embrace different ideologies and realize like how far the Mandalorian tribe and customs and cultures go, I think it's a really effective way, you know, to get her at the forefront and to make the story a little bit more about her and put her more in focus. I do wish that some more of that conversation and that conflict even between her and Din Djarin was a little bit more apparent in this episode, and most notably the episode 6 in which we're about to talk about. But I do think that ultimately, like, she is kind of that perfect person. She's been set up to be that really that light for the people that can, you know, sort of walk between both worlds. That brings us to episode 6, and we find Din Djarin, Grogu, Bo-Katan. They're going to go to this new planet called, I think it's Plazir 15, because they're looking for Bo-Katan's old sort of Mandalorian compadres. They're looking for Wolves and Casca Reeves, played by Simon Casanettes and Mercedes Vernado, a.k.a. Sasha Banks, a.k.a. Mercedes Monet, professional wrestler. Coming back here, didn't expect that to happen, but it seems to be pointing to the fact that they might have been responsible for freeing Moff Gideon from his prison transport. At least that's how it seemed like it presented itself, that they were sort of like the rogue Mandalorian agents that helped him go free. There's ulterior motives that they have that we don't necessarily know about at this point. So they're going to look for them on this new planet, but they all of a sudden get diverted and they're forced to go into sort of the main central point of this new planet, which is like this domed area. And we get to meet two new characters played by Jack Black and Lizzo. It's Captain, I think, what's his name? Captain Boudier or something like that. Captain Bombardier, some weird, almost sort of ironic name. And Lizzo is playing the Duchess. This casting in particular was shocking, I think, for all viewers, because nobody is like putting on their bingo card that Lizzo or Jack Black is going to be in a Star Wars episode of anything. But they sort of serve the purpose of being like the people that greet Mando and Bo-Katan. But then they all of a sudden send them on a mission as well. But before we talk about like even more specifics there, like, what are your thoughts? Jack Black coming in here, Lizzo, you know, taking her hand at acting. What were your thoughts about just their presence in this episode?
Man, I don't even know how to frame my thoughts here, man, because of course I love Jack Black. I think Lizzo's great too. It's something about them being in this episode that I think it's at the same time together that just I don't know, it felt weird, man. Especially their characters are very eccentric too. They're very much flamboyant and bright people. They got, I don't know, they eating all kind of crazy food, and again, they're supposed to be regal, and I don't know, it's something about it that felt very off to me. Again, especially maybe it's because the nature of the last episode, right? The pirate, where Mandalorians are very grounded people, right? Where they got armor and guns. That's what they do. They got armor gun, and then we come to this planet, and it's Lizzo and Jack Black. I don't know. The pirate felt very serious, and then we get to this episode, and it's like, y'all don't feel very serious. Not only because of that, but their brand is kind of silly people sometimes, right? Both Lizzo and Jack Black are funny people. They aspire to be funny. The things that they do sometimes are for comedy purposes. And so when you see them, you're not like, woo, I can't wait to see what they do in this Star Wars world. It's just like, I don't know. It felt very silly to me in the way. I think if they had split them up, maybe I wouldn't have felt that way, right? If maybe it was just Jack Black in an actress, and the next episode was like Lizzo in somebody else. I would have been like, okay, that's a cameo because we've had other funny people be in Star Wars, Kumail and Johnny, like, you know what I'm saying? Like other people have done it successfully, but them at the same time just felt like a lot. And I just wasn't ready for that. I don't think, again, especially coming off that last episode, which felt like, damn, where's Moff Gideon? He just got, you know what I'm saying? I expected that at this episode to then follow up with something slightly more serious than what we got.
Yeah, this shit was just goofy. It was just completely goofy. Like, why is Jack Black and Lizzo in this episode? And no, nothing against either of them. I also love Jack Black. I think he's great. Lizzo, she is totally fine. And she actually, in terms of her actual acting in this episode, she mostly plays it straight and she's fine. But the presence of them here makes no sense at all. Like, they don't need to be in this episode by any means. It just almost feels like Disney as a corporation just kind of flexing their connection, saying like, hey, we can get anybody in Star Wars. We can put anybody in this episode. We're going to get Lizzo, one of the most popular artists in pop culture, and we're going to get Jack Black, a real funny man, and just have him in this episode. But it's like, why? Because you could just like cast really good character actors, like just get really good actors to be in these roles to play these parts effectively. When you look at a show like Mandalorian, which is what they do every single week, like the Mandalorian has a bunch of real, and not to say that Lizzo isn't a real actor, but they have a bunch of like real actors that are like there to just like deliver the lines and do the job and just be that. But when you see Lizzo in the middle of a Star Wars episode, it just can't help but be distracting. Like there's no need for it. And I think we've seen Marvel do similar stuff where it's like, why is this person here? I will give Marvel credit that they typically kind of use that person more so for their actual persona. Like we saw Megan Thee Stallion and She-Hulk. She was just being Megan Thee Stallion. But maybe Harry Styles is a little bit more distracting because he's Harry Styles. But I'll give Harry Styles credit because he's trying to like really delve into acting and be super serious about it. This here is just like, I just felt like that there was no need. And then the episode proceeds to just not be eventful or entertaining because the mission that they get sent on is just like, for what? They're there to investigate some droids that are malfunctioning. Why is this important? Why do we really care about this? I guess it'll tie into the larger story at hand, but like droids haven't effectively been a part of the Mandalorian story in much of a significant way at all, unless I'm mistaken. But like droids were very much like prequel era storytelling. That was very much a part of like episode 2 and episode 3. And we get, you know, Christopher Lloyd's character here, who's sort of like the puppeteer behind this whole debacle. He's very much loyal to Count Dooku. He considers himself a separatist. And so I guess they want to connect it that way. But I just didn't understand the point of like why that this was here at this particular time. Like, how is this furthering the story at hand? How is this making anything all the more important? Like, did you find any sort of interest in the droid storytelling, the fact that these droids were malfunctioning and Din Djarin and Bo-Katan had to go sort of investigate what was happening there?
No. Not at all. I don't think. I think the offer that was given to them, I don't know their names, by Jack Black and Lizzo's characters, I think was interesting, right? Being for the Mandalorians to be recognized as a people again, right? As a community again. I think the incentive is interesting. What they had to do to get there, I mean, I think there are parts of it that could have been cool, right? Like this little detective story between them trying to figure out what's going on. I think ideas of it are fine. I don't think that it's that terrible. But when you start off the episode as goofy as you did, I don't know. It took really the rest of the episode. It took it out of me because I don't know. Again, it felt just as unserious as we were talking about. So yeah, I wanted to be interested. And again, I think there's ideas and aspects there that can be interesting, right? In a detective Star Wars story. The way it was put together just didn't work for me. Seeing Christopher Lloyd was like, man, you're too important to be in an episode. Like, this is the episode they gave you, bro. It just didn't feel the way I expected it should feel. So yeah, no, I wasn't. Again, ideas interesting, but the execution, no, I wasn't that interested.
And Christopher Lloyd's character was named Captain Hellgate, as if you couldn't tell he was a bad guy. They named him Captain Hellgate. So it's just
Come
like,
on, man.
What are we really doing here? So again, this episode was just like, it was just, I don't know, man. The only really good thing that I liked about it truly was the end, because we see Bo-Katan confront wolves, you know, for leadership of the Mandalorian people. And ultimately they have a quick, you know, sort of battle between each other. She bests him, and then ultimately we see her bestow the Darksaber, you know, because Wolves has that conversation where he's like, you know, you should really be in possession for it. It's almost like he's trying to pit Din Djarin against her, but Din Djarin is like, no, actually, he's right. You should have the dark saber. This should be your weapon. You rightfully, sort of wanted in combat. You only gave it to me, for a particular reason, but this should be yours. And so once again, we are seeing, sort of Bo-Katan take the reins of leadership and really live up to that idea of like bringing together all the disparate cultures and all the different factions within the Mandalorian people. So we'll see how that all plays out. Again, there's only 2 episodes left, so not much left in terms of the roadmap of storytelling. Any other hopes or, sort of desires out of these final 2 episodes? It looks like the final 2 will be directed by Rick Famuyiwa, who's, sort of been frequently directing a lot of the Mandalorian episodes. He did direct the first episode of the season as well, so he's going to close out the final chapters of the season. But any sort of hopes and aspirations for what we'll see in the final 2 episodes?
Yes, a black man. Again, my hope is that we just get some Moff Gideon stuff and some Mandalorian stuff, man. That's really what the story has kind of been shaken up to be. You can tell there's going to be some weird quarrels within the Mandalorian world, man, once they figure out that they freed Moff Gideon. And so I'm just looking for the resolution of that stuff, man. A little bit of good action. Again, give me Din Djarin and Grogu. Get the focus back on them and try to finish out a story. I think that's meaningful for the Mandalorian to come.
I want something shocking at this point. Like they gotta damn near knock my socks off. Like Bo-Katan has to be like the rogue agent at this point for me to be like, oh shit, like this is kind of crazy that they went this way and they went into this, sort of dark territory. Maybe she's working on behalf of Moff Gideon. That's very, very, very unlikely. The Mandalorian isn't necessarily known to take those types of creative swings. So I'm just like, I'm reaching really for that type of sort of surprise element to come in, but I do want more focus on Din. Like I want them to get back to some of the development with him. Like how is this all affecting him? How is he also going to play a part in trying to bring together all these different factions? Like instead of just like being at the right hand of Bo-Katan, because that just, I don't know, it looks a particular way, and I'm not really here for it. But we'll have to see what these final 2 episodes looks like. But folks, those are our thoughts on the 2 most recent episodes of season 3 of The Mandalorian. If you've checked them out on Disney Plus, hit us up and let us know what you think.